Todavía recuerdo perfectamente el tono de rojo en su cara cuando la puerta de la cabaña se abrió de golpe. Ahí estábamos. David y yo, el esposo de ella, parados en la entrada de mi refugio en la montaña. Copa de champaña en mano, mirando. Como mi esposo, Michael, se apresuraba a cubrirse con la cobija que yo misma le tejí para nuestro 5º aniversario. Detrás de él, media escondida, estaba Vanessa, su compañera de trabajo, mi supuesta amiga, y la esposa de David. Sus ojos, abiertos por el pánico, su rímel corrido por las mejillas, sorpresa, dije con una sonrisa que se sentía extraña en mi rostro. Mi voz ni siquiera tembló, a veces hasta yo me sorprendo de lo tranquila que puedo estar mientras todo a mi alrededor se derrumba. Pero me estoy adelantando. Déjame ir un poco. Atrás, 3 meses antes, yo vivía en una burbuja de felicidad. Michael y yo llevábamos 12 años de casados. Novios desde la universidad, habíamos construido una vida que parecía perfecta desde fuera. Yo manejaba mi negocio de diseño de interiores desde casa, mientras él escalaba posiciones en su firma de inversiones. Teníamos nuestra hermosa cabaña, en las montañas de Virkur, que compramos hace 6 años. Era mi proyecto soñado, en el que puse todo mi corazón para renovarla. Era nuestro santuario, nuestro escape del ajetreo citadino. Conocimos a David y Vanessa en una gala benéfica hace 2 años. Parecían la pareja perfecta para hacernos amigos, exitosos, encantadores. Con el mismo amor por el senderismo y las escapadas de fin de semana. Empezamos con cenas, luego fines de semana juntos. Vanessa y yo podíamos pasar horas hablando de diseño, mientras Michael y David hablaban de inversiones y pesca con mosca. Sentía que habíamos encontrado esa amistad adulta rara, donde todos se llevaban bien de verdad. Recuerdo estar sentada frente a Vanessa en un brunch, viéndola reír con algo que dijo Michael, pensando lo afortunada que era de haber encontrado otra pareja con la que ambos conectábamos. Qué ingenuo fue. La primera señal llegó en forma de un mensaje de texto. El celular de Michael sonó mientras se bañaba. Miré por instinto, no por chismosa. El adelanto decía: ya quiero que llegue nuestra próxima escapada. Todavía siento tu piel. El remitente, proyecto de trabajo. Dejé el teléfono en la mesa, con el corazón acelerado. Solo una colega que no sabe poner límites, me dije. No quise mencionarlo. No quería ser esa esposa. Después, vinieron las noches largas en la oficina, las juntas urgentes en fin de semana. El repentino deseo de ir solo a la cabaña, despejarse y avanzar en la propuesta de los Johnson, siempre los Johnson. Empecé a encontrar recibos de cenas para 2 personas en noches donde se suponía que había comido en su escritorio. Cargos de champaña premium cuando él solo toma whisky. No soy tonta, pero una cosa es sospechar y otra es saber. ¿Me entiendes? Necesitaba pruebas antes de enfrentar la destrucción de mi matrimonio. La confirmación llegó un miércoles, cuando pasé por su oficina sin avisar. Estaba cerca viendo a un cliente y quise sorprenderlo con café. La recepcionista me miró raro. ¿Michael? Hoy no vino. Tomó el día personal. Un día personal, cuando yo pensaba que estaba en reuniones de presupuesto. Le agradecí y me fui, con el café todavía caliente en la mano. Esa noche rastreé su celular. No es algo de lo que me enorgullezca, pero era necesaria. ¿Dónde estaba? En nuestra cabaña, en las montañas. Nuestro lugar especial, donde cada cojín, cada lámpara, cada silla fue elegida por mí, mientras yo dormía sola en nuestra cama. Él estaba allá con alguien más, pero ¿con quién? No lo sabía hasta que revisé nuestra nube compartida, buscando y había subido fotos recientes, y ahí estaban, imágenes que se le olvidó borrar. Nada explícito, gracias a Dios, pero sí reveladoras. Una chaqueta de mujer, colgada junto a la suya en el perchero que mandé hacer a medida. Una copa con labial rojo no era mi tono. Y luego una selfie de Michael en el lago, y al fondo, borrosa pero clara, Vanessa. Viendo hacia el agua, se me entumieron los dedos. No era una compañera cualquiera. Era Vanessa, la esposa de David, mi amiga. Me senté en el piso de la recámara, rodeada de pruebas. Pasaron horas. Lo confrontaba, le lanzaba todas sus cosas al jardín, quemaba la cabaña, en las películas. Las esposas engañadas siempre saben exactamente qué hacer. En la vida real, la traición te deja paralizada. Empiezas a cuestionar cada recuerdo, cada palabra, cada abrazo. Pero algo dentro de mí cambió. Una frialdad se impuso sobre el dolor. Me sequé las lágrimas y empecé a planear. Esto no sería una simple confrontación. Si ellos querían jugar, yo también sabía jugar, y yo iba a ganar. Primero necesitaba hablar con David. Eso fue lo más difícil. ¿Cómo le dices a alguien que su pareja está teniendo una aventura con la tuya? No hay una tarjeta para eso. Al final, lo invité a tomar un café en un lugar lejos de los sitios que solíamos frecuentar. Terreno neutral. Cuando David entró, casi no lo reconocí. En los grupos siempre era el animado, el que contaba chistes, el que hacía reír. Pero el hombre que se sentó frente a mí se veía más pequeño, como encorvado por un peso invisible. Creo que tenemos que hablar de Michael y Vanessa, le dije. Después de los saludos, sus ojos se encontraron con los míos. Y lo que vi no fue sorpresa, sino resignación. Ya, lo sabía, ¿verdad? Le dije. No fue una pregunta, él asintió en silencio, pasando el dedo alrededor de su taza aún llena. For 3 months in which he was barely discovering my marriage was a lie, he'd been living with the truth. Dine after dine, board games, branches with his friends, and he'd been silent. It felt nauseous. Why didn't you say anything? Yes, and you, I replied in a low voice to Uche. I just found out, he admitted. Yesterday, as I'd learned, hizo messages on Vanessa's iPad. They've been seeing each other at your cabin. In our cabin, y que acted automatically, feeling another step. That was my sanctuary, my creation. My safe haven. Michael had taken her right there. To that place David looked up. He says sharpened, Vanessa thinks he's going to leave you, that you're going to start a new life together. He left. A dry, almost hateful sound that surprised us both. You think so? And you? Just calete al demat, his smile was bitter. That I'm emotionally absent, obsessed with work, that I have no passion. That Michael makes her feel alive. Every word was like a knife twisting in my gut. I couldn't help but imagine the two of them together in my cabin. In my bed. Le finet their naive husbands. Michael had told me last month that he wanted to reduce a cabin's master bedroom. He spent weeks brainstorming, drawing up plans, asking for samples, he said quietly. And he said he wasn't entirely convinced. Now you understand why. Because she helped him decide, David reached out and took mine. His warm palm contrasted sharply with my easy fingers. In that moment, something passed between us, a sharp pain. Yes, but also the fest sparked up something more. Determination. What do you want to do? I asked what did he want? He wanted to turn back to me. He wanted my marriage back. He wanted to never have met Vanessa. With her perfect hair and bright red lipstick, he wanted to erase the image that my husband and my friend betraying me in the place he had built for myself. But that was not possible. So I told David my plans to follow in weeks. We a masterclass in deception. He played the clueless wife to perfection. He smiled during dinners with Michael. Giving no hint that he already knew a business trip and that the night at the office was a lie. I listened to him talk about his job, not when he complained about his workload while a cold fury grew inside me. So was when Vanessa texted me to invite me to lunch. It has been a while since we had real time, she wrote with a heart emoji. Seneb, I saw her at her favorite restaurant, excitedly talking about another shit bad. About how David wasn't even looking at her anymore. About how maybe she'd take a vacation alone to reconnect. All the way, his cell phone was buzzing with messages he knew were from my husband. You should go somewhere quiet, he suggested. Smiling, where you can unwind and think carefully about what you want. That's just what I need, she replied, excitedly. Something in the middle of nature, like a cabin in the mountains, he added. For a second, I saw something in his eyes, guilt, fear, I don't know. But he quickly detailed maybe. I haven't decided yet, I said I went to the bedroom and drew up everything I'd eaten. Then I fixed my makeup, put on my best fake smile, and went back to lunch with the woman who was sleeping with my husband. Meanwhile, David and I continued to meet secretly. We shared the information, dates, and pieced together the puzzle. We discovered that Michael and Vanessa met at the cabin every first weekend of the month when I claimed to have strategic retreats and she visited her island. En Tinkanettakat, their next getaway was approaching, the first weekend in October. The mountains would be covered in autumn colors. Michael had already started preparing the excuse, casually saying that maybe I would have to go to the cabin to prepare it for winter. Before the temperature dropped, I could go with you, he said innocently. It's been a while since we both went. No, I replied quickly. You have that presentation with your client. Besides, it'll be boring, just checking pipes. Cleaning gates. You're right, I nodded. You go, I'll stay. Waking. That night, as the same man who shared my bed for 12 years slept next to me, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. Wondering when he stopped loving me, or if he ever did thought about our beginnings. About the sleepless nights talking. About dreams, about the future. About how he held my hand at my father's funeral. About how we danced in our first empty apartment. Was it all leading to this? Was a me can't emanate now what had the most wasn't even the infidelity. It was knowing that while he was fully present in our marriage, I was holding back parts of himself, reserving space for betrayal. I gave him everything, my trust, my youth, my dreams. I built my life around his. I supported his decisions, his ambitions, I believed in us so much, I never saw the cracks. Even now, watching him sleep, I felt the urge to wake him up, to scream at him, to demand answers. Why her? Why awake Evan? Why wasn't enough? But I knew, those conversations would only give him an opportunity to lie to me more, to manipulate me, to make me doubt no. It was better this way. Let him think I got away with it, let him think she was us. Stupid as he thought she was, his arrogance would be his downfall. In the darkness of our room, I made a promise to myself, I gave everything to this marriage. And he threw it away like it was weightless. But I'm not going to break. I'm not going to be the victim in his story. This is still my life, and I'm going to get it back. Piece by piece, starting with a wake Evan in the mountains. The first frost of October arrived just the day before their escape. From my kitchen window, I watched the ice form de la Carpenters and the glass. It seemed fitting. My heart had also developed a layer of ice. David and I found our plan over breakfast at a cafe in a nearby town. We were already experts at clandestine meetings, speaking in code, maintaining a facade while we plotted our response to the betrayal. Are you sure about this? I asked, assisted the cafe for the fifth time. We could confront them directly, file for divorce, move on with our lives. I put down my spoon. Is that what you want? For them to go off happily and start their new lives while we pick up the pieces. Aside, running his hand through his hair no, but I'm worried about what this will do to us. To you. To me. What will happen next? Was right. What were we really doing? A spectacular confrontation wouldn't erase the infidelity. It wouldn't restore the past. But it would give us something we didn't have now. Control. The ability to write, even if only, this final chapter. I need this. David, I said softly. I need to see his eyes when he knows I know. I need to be the one who ends this, not the one left behind while he walks away. David squeezed my hand, so let's do it right. The plan was simple. But perfect we knew they would arrive at the cabin on Friday afternoon. Michael told me he'd leave straight from work around last 3 p.m. to avoid traffic. Vanessa told David she'd go see her aunt and return on Sunday. I had installed security cameras in the cabin last year, supposedly for security, since it was somewhat isolated. But really, because I lapsed in my design progress when we went there, Michael had clearly forgotten. For weeks I watched them arrive together. I watched them come into my house, use my kitchen, drink from my glasses. The cameras had no audio, but the silence was enough, the betrayal was clear, in high definition. The key to our plan was timing. We had to act after they'd settled in, but before anything too intimate happened. I couldn't stand watching that, and I didn't want David to experience it either. We decided last 7 p.m. was a perfect time. Enough time for them to arrive, unpack, open a bottle of wine, and start cooking just the right domestic scene to interrupt. But first, there were things to prepare, evidence together. And I still had one more card up my sleeve, that even David didn't know about. While Michael thought he was at a design conference in Boston, he drove to the cabin 2 days before his planned weekend. Of course, I had my own keys. The title was in my name, after all. Something Michael had apparently forgotten. The cabin was just as I left it. And yet, completely different, knowing what had happened there changed everything. Every surface felt contaminated. I walked through each room slowly, touching the furniture, the walls, reconnecting with my space. In the master bedroom, I opened the closet, and there it was, at the back, behind some spare blankets. A small bag with Vanessa's things, toiletries, a robe, slippers. It had made its own space in my home. In my life, the desert made my blood boil. I didn't touch anything. I just did something, a small recording device hidden under the bed. Not to record it. I wasn't interested in that kind of evidence. What I wanted were the conversations, what they say to each other when they think no one is listening. Their plans, their confessions, their lies. Next, I went to the studio, where the security system is controlled. I downloaded all the videos from the last 6 months onto a USB drive. Then I went to the file cabinet where we keep the documents, deeds, insurance policies, receipts. I took photos of everything, especially the title deed, my name, Acceso Leone. When we bought the cabin, we decided to put it in my name only for tax reasons, since my business sometimes reported losses. An accounting strategy that would now have no purpose before leaving. I set up one last camera, this one pointing. Directly drove back to the city, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. I didn't have my marriage back, but I did have some of my power back, on the day of the confrontation. David and he brought something, he said, taking note for later, yes, with a grim smile, to celebrate send up to marriages or the beginning of our freedom, he replied he liked that Bech and Bete, we drove my car to Sekevan. David's car stayed in the hotel parking lot. The folks were there. It would have been beautiful under the circumstances, but today it just seemed like the whole world was on fire. David was silent most of the way. He looked out the window. Checking his hair, he said finally. I arrived about an hour ago, in a that, without taking my eyes off the mountain. Pet, Michael too, y Edith. The security app shows two people entered at las 5:13 p.m. within to the private road that leads to Sekevan. Was he ready to face my husband and his mistress? Ready to end my marriage, but on my terms, ready to look at the two WHO broke my heart and show them they didn't destroy me. I've been ready for weeks, he replied. And as he said it. He knew it was true, the pain was still there, and maybe it always would be, but now, alongside it, there was something else, determination, strength, the certainty that they could have made it, be parked out of sight, through the trees. We could see the warm light coming from the windows. Smoke was pouring out up the chimney. My fireplace, my firewood, my house, David said, his voice tight, not for long, he assured him, taking the bottle of champagne, it's time, as we walked toward the front door. I felt something strange, peace, it wasn't the end of my story. It was just the beginning of a new chapter. Michael's expression as he opened the door was with every second of the pain he'd experienced. First there was surprise, then confusion, and then, horror of understanding. His mouth opened and closed, like a fish without Alexandra. I said at last, what are you doing? Surprise inspection, he replied with joy, raising the bottle. Behind him, Vanessa appeared in the hallway wrapped in my favorite blanket, the same one I had knitted during our trip to Vermont 3 winters ago. A froze when he saw us. His face drained up color. For a moment, I thought he was going to faint. David, she whispered, clutching the blanket. Hello. Dear, David replied with a calmness I knew he didn't feel. A lovely evening to visit Connecticut, isn't it? House, your aunt. Michael took a step back as if trying to escape the blow. We went inside. The smell was like salmon, my recipe. Surely, 2 glasses of wine on the table. A half-empty bottle of red wine, the lit fireplace, the warm atmosphere. Perfect scene for me, don't know. Alexandra, I can explain, Michael began, finding his voice again. Always so self-assured. Always believing he could talk his way out of anything, though, of course you can, he replied. Uncorking the champagne with a sound that tasted like heaven. You're very good at explaining things, telling stories. Lying, I poured 4 glasses with steady hands. But before you make up another one of your pretty lies. I thought it might be a good idea to have a little reality check. I handed drinks to David and Michael. I didn't offer any to Vanessa. I told her to keep hugging my blanket. What is this? Michael blurted out, now more angry than surprised. Some kind of ambush? Interesting choice of words, David commented, taking a sip of his drink. Very calm, all things considered. Vanessa took a few hesitant steps toward her husband David. Please, this isn't what it seems. What a disappointment, he interrupted her. I thought at least you'd be more original. I sat down in my favorite chair, crossed my legs, and adopted the posture of a hostess with unwelcome guests, since we're all here. I thought we could talk about property. Specifically, this cabana. Michael frowned. What's wrong? Well, as a legal owner, I've noticed some strange activities lately. Legal owner? Vanessa repeated. Looking at Michael's spark up panic in my husband's eyes was delicious. I hadn't told his mistress that. Oye, I confirmed, taking out my phone and showing her the photos of David. So Leone, actually. Michael and I put it in my name for tax reasons when we bought it. Thanks to the technical detail, by the way. We bought it with money from my inheritance. Michael blurted out, after my dad died, I reminded him. Remember the time, Michael? When he was devastated and you were so supportive, I wondered if it was real or just a plan. He lowered his gaze, at least he had that gesture. I turned to Vanessa. WHO had plopped down on the couch. Still cuddling my blanket. Did he tell you this Kevin was bad with the money as if death my father died? Did he mention that to you when he brought you here to the place he built to heal that pain? She shook her head, her eyes filling with tears. Alexandra, Michael tried again. Now in that conciliatory tone he used with difficult clients. This isn't helping. Why don't we let David and Vanessa give us a moment alone? No, David said firmly, I'm not going anywhere. I smiled gratefully at him and looked back at Michael also. We're just getting to the good stuff, the security cameras. This was the moment he had been waiting for. He grabbed the remote and turned on the flat screen above the fireplace. With a few clicks, I access the cabin security system, I install this kemas last year, I explained as a clear my jobs and main entrance appear. For security, I said back then, WHO would have thought they'd be used for anything else. The video started playing. Michael and Vanessa even together. Month after month, they came in and out of my house, sometimes carrying grocery bags. Once with a rep package about they present, I later discovered, thanks to the audio. There's more, I said, switching to another camera, the one on the back deck. There they were again, drinking wine under the stars. His arm on his shoulders. You've been spying on me, Michael shouted, red-faced with fury no. I was watching. The recordings of my property. I kicked at him, legally, it's very different. And that's not even the interesting part. I picked up the USB stick I had in my pocket. Here are videos from the bedroom cameras. Vanessa let out a small stifled moan. No you don't, the truth is, there were no cameras in the bedroom. But they didn't know that, do you want to see them? I asked with a cold smile. I made a compilation of highlights. Super educational. This is an invasion of privacy. Michael shouted. Almost shaking my property, I reminded him, but the videos aren't even the best. I took out my laptop and opened it, showing a draft email. This is a message for the partners at your firm, Michael. Attached camera screenshots, along with financial records proving you charge clients for dinners on nights you were actually here with Vanessa. Expense fraud is serious in investment banking. Isn't it? His face turned from red to ashen. You wouldn't do it. I haven't done it yet, I replied. It depends on how this conversation ends. Then I turned to Vanessa, and this other one is for the board of the Children's Foundation you chair. Vanessa the one that promotes family, values, and moral leadership. How do you think they'll view this image as a view using financial trips? Vanessa burst into tears, mesqueraran in down her face please, Alexandra, my reputation, my job, your reputation? I repeated. Incredulous. Is that what you're worried about while you're half naked in my house, having an affair with my husband? David stood beside me. His presence was like a wall. A united front. We're not here to destroy them, as a family. Although we could, what do you want? Michael asked. Defeat already evident in his voice finally. We were getting somewhere we can clean divorce, he said. With these conditions, I get the Kevin. Obviously. The apartment in the city. Half of all our assets. You admit to adultery on paper. No irreconcilable differences, and you two, I looked at both of them, stay completely out of our live FORIVR. And my terms are similar, David edit. Full custody of our daughter. The house. Half of everything. And Vanessa publicly admitting that she was responsible for destroying our marriage. Do you want to humiliate us? Vanessa snapped, finally. Speaking forcefully no, I kicked at her, we want responsibility, it's very different. Michael started pacing the room. His mind clearly processing options, calculating risks, thinking about how to get his way. It was what made him brilliant at his job. But this time, he had no way. What if we refuse? Michael finally asked his smile. A genuine smile. And that seemed to bother him more than if he had gotten angry, so, the emails go out tonight, he said, and tomorrow. Everyone calls their own lawyers. We begin the deadliest, most public, and most detailed divorce proceedings ever seen. Your entire deception becomes public record. Every expense report will be audited. Every weekend in this cabin will be dated and time stamped. Linda little towards him is this. How you want to start your new life? Under that kind of scrutiny, the silence that followed was thick. As if they had stopped, Michael and Vanessa looked at each other. That silent look between them had me more than I cared to admit. Despite everything, they still had that connection, that silent language only now they were using it to face their ruin, not to plan their escape. I need to think about it, Michael said finally. You have until tomorrow, I replied. David and I will be staying at the Highland Inn. We expect your response before las 9 a.m. Are you kicking us out? Vanessa asked, panicking her voice. Today, it's already getting dark, and yes, they're leaving, David confirmed. Pack your things. All your things, Edith, looking directly at a small bag he found in the closet. Michael opened his mouth, as if to argue, but he didn't say anything. I had no more fight left. And we were wait, one more thing, he said, standing up, and walking over to the like vanity took out a small package he had hidden there days before. He handed it to Michael, happy and obviously, her face fell. Our date was the following week, the 10 years of marriage. The traditional gift was lace. Inside the package was a delicate lace handkerchief, embroidered with our initials. I had it made months before, when I didn't yet know the truth. I guess you won't be needing it anymore, he said quietly, as he and Vanessa gathered their things. In defeated silence, I stood on the quiet David, watching Celeste ray of sunlight disappear behind the mountains. Everything in front of us was ablaze with color, even as the sunset. Are you okay? I asked, his warm shoulder brushing against mine in the chilly air. No, he admitted. But he will be. Behind us. The cabin door closed. An engine started, and the sound of tires on gravel faded away, and just like that, they were gone. David and I looked at each other in the falling darkness, still holding our glasses to new beginnings. I said, raising his glass to get back what sauce, he replied. Bumping mine with his, the sound of the crystal resonated, pure and firm in the silence of the mountain. A year later, I stood on that same deck, watching the same mountains blaze into autumnal colors. The air had that same chill, the sky. The team passable blue, but everything was different. The divorce had been finalized 6 months earlier. Michael didn't fight the tense. After all, the evidence was too overwhelming. And the professional consequences too dangerous. I signed everything with unmuted resignation, which was in a way more satisfying than any screaming. Vanessa and David's relationship was more chaotic. She tried to fight for custody of their daughter. Emma, but evidence of his prolonged absences during the romance worked against her. In the end, she moved to Chicago to start over, leaving behind broken relationships and ruined reputations. I learned from acquaintances that Michael and Vanessa didn't last even 3 months after the confrontation. The foundation of this is that sustained their relationship couldn't withstand public pressure or private resentment. She blamed him for losing their daughter. I blamed her for costing him his promotion at CFM. After I was demoted following anonymous allegations of fraudulent expenses, their great love story built in a shadow of betrayal. Crumbled in the light of the consequences. And my year was a journey through grief, anger, acceptance, and finally, rebuilding. I threw myself into my design business. I rebranded it. I expanded it. I reconnected with old friends. I rediscovered forgotten passions. And I spent a lot of time at the cabin. At first, it had. Each room held a memory that was hard to escape. But little by little, I began to reclaim it. I painted the bedroom. I replaced the furniture. Even the blanket in a ceremonial bonfire. Under the full moon, I removed his presence from my sanctuary. The sound of footsteps behind me brought me out of my thoughts. It was David, holding 2 cups of coffee. He handed me one with a smile that, even if everything still made my heart race. Emma's finally asleep. I sat, leaning on the railing next to me, the mountain and knocked head on. I left, thinking of the 7-year-old girl asleep. In the guest room, surrounded by the staff animals she insisted on bringing for the weekend, I loves this place. I commented, me too, David admitted, looking at me with that calm connection we had built over the last year. None of this had been planned. After the confrontation, we only talked to coordinate the divorce, align our chance, maintain a united front. But little by little, those coffee meetings turned into dinners, then movies, walks, and 6 months ago a shy kiss that surprised us both because of how good it felt. We didn't live together. Not yet. We were both still nursing our wounds. Cautious. We weren't ready for that kind of commitment yet. But we were building something, honest, real, step by step. What are you thinking about? I asked, noticing that he had fallen silent in everything. And in nothing, he replied, taking a sip of coffee, letting the warmth spread through my chest. How different everything is compared to this same date a year ago. And added, understanding without me having to explain, do you regret anything? I asked, about how we handled all of this. It took a moment to think about it. Did I regret the confrontation? The ultimatums? The publicity of the divorce? No, I finally said, I needed to regain control. To end things on my terms, not theirs. I tend to face him. They wanted to erase us from our own stories. David, they wanted to turn us into discarded spouses, obstacles to their happiness. I wasn't going to accept the ending, so you rewrote it. I said with a soft smile, we rewrote it. I kicked at him. Both of us, I placed his cup on the railing and took my hand. Kissing the palm with his thumb. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we hadn't discovered them, if they had continued their affair in secret? Sometimes, he admitted, maybe he was still living in ignorance, planning NBC trips, renovating the bedroom. Not understanding why Michael seemed increasingly distant to would that have been better, I shook my head firmly. Living Ali is not living. I'd rather face a painful truth than a comfortable lie. Inside, the fireplace was still lit. From the window, the glow of the flames could be seen. Warm and inviting last fall, this cabin was. season of fury, betrayal, and broken hearts. Now it was transforming into a space of healing, a new beginning, you know, David said thoughtfully. I can't stop remembering Vanessa's face when we walked in that night. I'd never seen anyone so surprised. I let out a laugh that was lost in the dark mountains, and Michael seemed to have seen a ghost or two. Rather they never imagined we'd find out, let alone the three join forces. That was your biggest mistake, I said, leaning my head on his shoulder, underestimating us. We sat in silence, comfortable, watching the first stars appear in the twilight sky. Inside, Emma slept peacefully, oblivious to all the drama that had brought us here, for her. Her dad had a new friend, one who made pancakes in fan shapes and taught her how to identify wildflowers on hikes. That's Kevin, I said suddenly, officially. The paper said yesterday. It's mine now. Only mine, David turned to look at me. His eyebrows raised. That's incredible. I know what this place means to you. It means something different now, he replied. It is not just a refuge anymore. It is a reminder that sometimes you have to face the worst moment of your life in order to find your way to something better. I put his arm around my waist. And you think this is something better? I think we're on our way, he replied truthfully. One weekend trip at a time, as a nightingale does. I thought about that strange, twisting road that had brought us here, how betrayal opens the door to authenticity. How loss created the space for something new to grow. Michael and Vanessa store moments in this place. They build their relationship on lies and deceit. David and they are building it in full view of everyone, stone by stone, with truth, with shared pain, with intention. Let's go inside, I suggested, raising our empty cups. It's starting to get cold. Hand in hand. We walked back toward the cabin. My cabin. Leaving the past outside in the darkness. Where it belongs, some would call it a poetic justice. But I prefer to call it something else. Claim. We reclaimed our history, our dignity, and this sanctuary on the mountain, and in doing so, we discovered something unexpected. Sometimes the end of one story is just the beginning of a better one.